Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to BBallBreakdown. I am pleased to have Ernie Kent with us of Washington State. You just had a terrific speech over at George Raveling's Coaching for Success Academy. But people might not know that you were a serious player back then for Dick Harder and the Kamikaze Kids. So can you just give us an idea of what the game was like back then, and actually what kind of player were you?
The game has changed immensely because back in those days, players were not as creative, didn't have the freedom to be as creative because coaching really dictated and controlled everything, whereas in this day and age, players have a lot more freedom on the floor to express their games and express themselves. So we were a tough, physical basketball team that dove on the floor. We really got after you defensively. Hand checking was allowed back in those days, so you can just imagine how aggressive it was. And the type of player I was more of a free-flowing offensive player that was locked in a box. I'll put it that way.
So were you, I guess, a wing? Did you shoot from the outside? Did you penetrate? How did you play?
I actually played every single position during my college career, from point guard to the wing to a power forward even. I remember guarding Marcus Johnson, who was a tough matchup for me, but you had that flexibility in your game to be able to guard different people at different positions.
What was it like having to deal with a UCLA at the height of their powers, in that conference every year? And then, if I'm not mistaken, even at that time, only one Pac-10 team went to the tournament?
Well, it was Pac-8 at that time, and only one Pac-8. It tells you how long ago it was. But if you think about modern day, it was like playing the Kentucky, where Kentucky has all the McDonald All-Americans sitting. That's how UCLA were, but they are NBA All-Stars, and all of them, most of them are All-Americans coming out of college, and then they go on to be All-Stars in the NBA and some of the best players in the NBA as well, too.
You had an opportunity to do some color commentary on games, and I'm kind of curious if that affected your coaching or gave you any extra insights.
It definitely helped my coaching because in a couple of areas. Number one, it gave you an opportunity to step away from the game and see it totally from a different perspective without all the pressure there. Our biggest concern when a game ended during TV was where we're going to eat, so you didn't have to worry about anything else. And then number two, just to be able to go in and out of different practices of people within the conference and around the country, it certainly enhanced or kind of took you back to school with the game of basketball. Not that there was anything earth-shattering out there that was new, but really just to reinforce everything you were doing was correct. So that was a pretty good deal.
X's and O's are great. I'm sure everyone can study those. At what point in your career and what sort of spurred you on to sort of develop much more of what you talked about as far as the emotional relationship with your players?
I think when I was a head coach at St. Mary's College, I'll never forget having this really talented group of athletes that we had done a really good job of recruiting character into our program, and they really changed the course of direction at St. Mary's College. Yet you were still this tough byway or the highway basketball coach, but you had a team that needed more compassion. And I remember being in a trip over in Taiwan with my basketball team and really got a great feel for who they were, and we ended up winning the Jones Cup over there, which was a really difficult tournament to win. But that's where it changed for me, really getting a group that came to me and said, hey, coach, we need for you to lighten up a little bit more. And it really, the light bulb just kind of came on. These guys, their character was in place. They needed to be led a different way as men.
So this is actually, your team came to you, and you were receptive and open right away to it.
Well, I do what they do in corporate America a little bit. I do exit interviews. So I took my seniors and say, okay, you're done playing for me. Let me know what you think. And I remember this one senior in particular says, Coach Kent, we're over here and you're over here. And I thought I was the guy that brought them the chicken soup when they got sick and everything else, but their perception of it was totally different. So it gave me a chance to kind of check myself to make sure I took my intelligence level, came down to their level in terms of being able to deal with, more importantly, to relate to who they were as people.
In their speech, and this is the last question, you had a great quote where you said, never tell a young man or young woman that they can't do something. Your son is a professional athlete. And I'm kind of curious, was that born out of your personal experience?
I think with my son Jordan, who at an early age was diagnosed with some traits of autism and everything, and he really fought through all that and came out of all of that. But the biggest thing I think with young people, like it is my son, you never tell people they can't do anything. You never put them in a box, because you really want to do the opposite. Express to them they can be anything and do anything they want to do. Therefore, you'll get more productivity out of them if they're reaching for the stars versus reaching for the manhole cover, I would say. So in Jordan's case, my son and everything, unique athlete, unique individual. If we all had Jordan Kent's on our team, we'd all be champions.
Is it safe to say that before you made that connection with the emotional connection with their players, were you more like a Bobby Knight kind of coach, or was it a little bit of a balance?
I'd say more of a balance, because I realized that I'd play for a Marine drill sergeant and Dick Harder at the University of Oregon, who was a very tough and demanding coach. And you do take on the characteristics of your coach like you do your dad. And at some point in time, you have to figure out who you are as a coach. And it took me going to Saudi Arabia for 7 years, running my own program, coming back, working for a guy like Boyd Grant at Colorado State, Mike Montgomery at Stanford, before I inherited a Division I program at St. Mary's, to really find out who I was, not only as a man, but as a coach and what my coaching philosophy. And sometimes you learn what to do and you learn what not to do.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you again for coming on. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown, we're not a channel, we're a conversation. You win? You win, Coach?
I win, no question.